And I believe we're live streaming. Oh, perfect. Okay, it's me. Pause that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting. The Howard Go Team meeting will start. It is 4:49. The agenda has been emailed to you, and we will follow that agenda that has been publicly noticed. I would like to remind everyone that the meeting of the Go Team, only members of the team may participate in the discussion, and any member of the public present are here to quietly observe. For members of the Go Team, if we can, since we're virtual for voting, if you can raise your hand with the raise hand function, or make sure that you raise your hand virtually so we can see you. And we will make sure that we have the visual of the raising hands for that. First order of business is to take the attendance roll call. Kina, do you want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, I can go ahead. All right, Ms. Hollis.
Present.
Mr. Brooks. Perfect. Mr. Brooks. Ms. Alderi.
Present.
Perfect. Mr. Griggs.
Present.
Dr. Bryant. Ms. Nolan.
Present.
Mr. Langman.
Present.
Mr. Baker.
Present.
And Ms. Rayner.
Present.
Perfect.
Great, so we have quorum. So our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Is there any additions or revisions that anybody would like to add to the agenda as posted?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Perfect. And could I get a second for that?
Second.
Wonderful. And if you could just say your names when you do it, just so Hina can make sure to capture that. All in favor, please say aye. Raise your hands. Raise hand function.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Wonderful. We will move to the meeting minutes from the last meeting. Hina sent those. Are there any recommendations for revisions or updates? If not, then we're going to be looking for a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Langbein. And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hands. Wonderful. And all those opposed? I don't see any. And any abstentions? I don't see any. So we then are going to move. Do we have any public comment, Principal Hollis?
We do not.
All right, perfect. So we're going to move straight to the first discussion item, which is the 25-20-30 strategic plan development discussion items.
Everyone can see the screen, correct?
Yep.
Great. So again, this is an overview of what we're doing. We are trying to align ourselves to the strategic plan for the district. Our goals and objectives should be looking for a timeline to 2030. And we are tasked with them updated, approved, and ranked by January. And to not delay the budget process. This is the district's 2025-2030 strategic plan, where we're community leaders getting back to the basics and those goals and objectives are listed there. We have talked about reading our mission and vision to what district's mission and vision is, and remembering that that should have something to do with who we are and what we do. And then we're going to go into the strategic goals and our objectives today. And this again is the overview of the planning process. And in our last meeting, we reviewed our KPI, which is school data. We talked our mission and vision. We have not voted on that final revision. We felt pretty cool what was there, but we'll review it today again. And we talked about our goals. And I was tasked with writing out the goals as a draft with the updated data point. And so we'll look into that there. So this is what we streamlined a little bit more to share around the mission vision. Josh and I worked a little bit line to just tweak the wording a little bit more. So that's why I keep saying it's proposed and it is not voted on. So what we have as of right now is our mission is we educate all students through rigorous and relevant learning experiences, ground our signature STEAM programming. Then all David T. Howard students become critically thinking, responsible citizens and empowered innovators, ready to shape the future in a rapidly changing world. And so I'm going to pause here to get feedback.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. I'm going to keep going then. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Baker, rather. So our strategic goals that I kind of worked based on the data conversations we had last minute are here, and I provided it to everyone so they can see them to come back with their questions so that we can get to the objectives part. And I landed where we landed with the increase by 15%. For overall, 20% for subgroups. I do want to lift that one of the suggestions was to not list both portions of the goal, and I do not remember where we landed with that, so I put both there. So I don't know if you have feedback from what you see here. I do know that there was some fat lifted around maybe the language, like the order of language shifting. Josh, do you want to bring some voice to that?
Sure. Yeah. I was just in looking at this thinking that you could, there's potential ways to convey the same information either with like a headline or just even starting with, which I think even the bolding here kind of draws your attention to what the substance really is. So even what you've done here does that well. But another option is to just start with like GMAS end of grade ELA data will increase by 15%, right? Start there and then say by spring 2030. I just think that's all, preference. But my take on these, for what it's worth, is that I think the goal areas, the three areas, are right and reflect the conversation we had last time. I like the ambition of where you've landed in the targets. Though I recognize it probably maybe feels like it tilts a little bit towards ambition to get to 88%, for example, on ELA, but hopefully still feasible. I personally like the subgroup callouts and having that be there. And I like that the targets you're shooting for the subgroups are faster progress than the overall, which would reflect narrowing gaps that relative to what they currently exist. So I think this reflects a lot of what we talked about last time, and great thinking and work on your part. But I think there's ways you could play with the language, but not change the substance if there's certain ways you want to convey information with like headlines or stuff like that.
And so I just wanted to that voice to be here, because I mean, this is a public facing document. That is written is traditionally how we would write it in the school or in certain industries. But if we want families to read it and grasp it and understand what we're trying to do understand how shifting the order of the content may make it a little bit more readable and feasible for consumption. Does anybody else have any thoughts in that place?
I think it's you could do it either way. I think it's important to say when this goal is. The goal is for 2030, so it's nice to call that out at the beginning. This is not 1 year goal. The other thing you could do is, rather than saying we'll increase by 20% from 30 to 50%, is just saying 30% to 50% and put in parentheses plus 20% or an increase. So I think it's just how whatever language that you think, if this is written for the community, what they are receptive to, what you've heard responses about keeping things consistent, I think that's totally up to you, personally. But there's a couple different ways you could write the same thing. I do like the overall goal increase and the call outs of the subgroups, if that's the first question you were asking.
I don't know, the teachers, do you have anything you want to lift about it?
Kind of like starting with the goal itself and then having the rest of the language there. But I sort of agree that stylistically that can go either way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was wondering, just for bullet point number 1, if we should spell out students with disabilities, SWD, just to make clear for people who might not know what that acronym stands for.
And GMAS EOG.
Could we define those at the bottom of our document?
We could, yeah, to avoid, too much wordiness or, yeah. Yeah.
And having to write it out multiple times, and also
Right.
define Godot and CCRPI maybe. I mean,
As we continue to move through, and this is just saying where we are in the process. We already know we do need to do this part, but I wanted to show, and I'll go back. This is pretty much what it's looked like in the past. And so when we start calling out every term word, the rating is going to get smaller and smaller. If that makes sense. It goes live up here, if it gets larger, some things will get smaller. So
that's why I was saying,
they
could we
wanted
just
to be a
define it at the
one-sheeter.
we just define it at the bottom of the document, what the acronyms are?
But with a footnote, you're saying? That makes sense to me. Just put like an asterisk and a footnote or something.
Correct.
So the school has to also add its strategic goals on here. I mean,
Yeah.
strategic pieces on too. And that, from the way I think is gonna look, it will be where the red spot is. We could make a second page footnotes, but I don't know that. I feel like we're gonna get really tight. Where if we call that on the second page, we're still one shooter, but if you're on the website, you could go to that second page to get that. I just wanted to lift that. I don't know what the final product is going to look like, so I kind of just tried to make it flow the way it has looked in the past. So going back to what we're doing today, if we don't have any call outs on that today, so what we have done as of right now, we've reviewed the KPIs. We have aligned our mission and vision and chose not to do a purpose because our purpose is to educate kids. And confirmed the goals that we set for 2030. So now we're trying to align our strategic objectives. And we used to call those key priorities, if I'm not mistaken. But so the stage we're in right now is we're going to reflect on what we were doing in the 20 to 2025 strategic plan, look at what we want to stop doing and what we want to continue doing, align those objectives that we want to continue using with new focus areas, and review, discuss additional objectives that we might want to start going forward. So again, the school strategic priorities from our previous plan, we need to figure out what we would want to stop and continue so that we can place them under our new 6-bucket strategy plan. Does anyone want to lift any things that they feel like we should stop from the 10 that we condensed to? I think we did that in April.
Do you want to go maybe to the slide where we tentatively dropped some in so we could, I guess we can see it on this page. Forget it. I apologize.
I'll be honest, I don't have a strong opinion about this I imagine all of these are things that you will likely want to continue in some shape or form. I think the question for me, the stop isn't as much about stop doing it. I think the question is, do you feel like it rises to the level of importance of being articulated as a key objective or priority or whatever we're calling it, key objective for this strategic plan, right?
I think
The lens that would be on my
objectives
mind
now.
there. Okay. The lens that would be on my mind there is like, which of these things do you think are really going to drive those 3 goals that we just looked at? Because those 3 goals, I don't think are they're important, and I don't think they're easy, right? And so I'd be wondering like which of these things are most important so that we're able to focus on those, even if some of these things are good things to do in running a school, but they may not need to be called out in the strategic plan in the same way as they were in the past.
So outside of those 3 goals, when you look at the other KPIs, there's still other KPIs that the school and the community are responsible for over this 5-year period. So those 3 goals, I don't think encompass all of the KPIs that we have to move. So we may have to address some things in those objectives that are not necessarily in the goals specifically. Like for instance, the student and staff relationships under We Are Caring for Every Child KPI, that has its as a goal of moving 21 points, which is one of our highest items that we have to move in 5 years. We don't have a goal per se, but we have some school strategies that we've called out before that might address that. Does that make sense, Josh?
I'm tracking. I don't know. I'm trying to put myself in if I were leading the school or leading an organization. You've got to balance the leading the whole with the focus, right? So we also have the vision and mission, right? So like I think I'd be thinking about what are the key objectives that will help drive the goal progress and live into the vision and mission, which is pretty all-encompassing. So again, I don't know enough to make a particular case of like, hey, kill number 5 or kill number 4. I just think it would be like, if I imagine presenting the strategic plan to what's really in my mind is like teachers, right? Like, and also the community at large, but in particular teachers. And I'm trying to send a message about this is where we're headed next, right? We're focusing on achieving these things, and here's some things we're really gonna do to make that happen. I feel like it's just thinking about the listener's ability to take in all that information and process it and then be committed to it. There's diminishing returns with the number of objectives we start to talk about, right? Like about how many can they commit to memory and really understand and internalize. But I'm not,
So I think what you also need to know is that the next step will be prioritizing these priorities, and then that is what our budget is based around. So we will then be asked to link up our budget with these priorities after we prioritize them. So if it's not on these priorities, potentially someone could say you are not then budgeting to lift your priorities. Does that make sense?
sure, yeah.
So it is important that this is more than just a document to discuss with the community. It is a document that drives the budgeting process and where we spend our money. And Principal Hollis will present us the budget, and she will show us how the flex money that she has, the little she has, will support these priorities.
But I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think what he's trying to lift is certain things happen regardless if they're on this list or not. And what these strategic objectives should lead itself to is not the KPIs. KPIs is just data to help us inform the decision. Is more so, where do you all want to put your focus in helping these goals to go or
Yeah,
manifest?
again, I don't have a strong opinion about the substance, to be honest. I'd be curious to hear from the teachers, right? Like, how do you experience a document like this? And are there some that feel more important to you than others? Maybe that's already getting to the prioritization conversation, and so we should table that, to Dion's point. And then what I'm hearing you, Dion, it's making me think, oh, like which one of these do potentially have resource implications? And if any of them don't have resource implications, does that also start to make the case of like we don't necessarily need to be calling it out, right? Like in the same way. I don't know, like I look at this, I don't know that providing two-way communication implies a lot about resource implications.
I do want to also look from a teacher perspective, like the things that we do at the school, which are those school priorities or school strategies, what we used to call them. The ones that's really low on the right in the gray and blue and orange, those are those strategies to attack those as well. But doesn't mean that the teachers can't have an opinion on these because they're this, governance body as well. But I think the things that they do for day to day live in that space. But I don't like we're developing this anew.
Yeah.
Diane was on here. I don't know, Ms. Jacoby, if she wants to bring voice to the discussion around how to look at the start, stop, continue.
I'm sorry, Principal Hollis, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I heard my name. Did you have a question? I'm sorry, I was
right. We were
distracted.
just trying to get a clear understanding when we're looking at the start, stop, continue for the strategic objectives. From whose lens should we be looking at these objectives? Should the objectives be how we're going to govern to get to goals? Should it be how the community is going to look at, what we're doing as a school entity to the goals? Like, what lens should the strategic objectives be written?
So just like just like the school board has set those priorities and those objectives that they have, like around the KPIs, it's the same thing for you all. So from that governance lens, if you're talking about these strategic objectives, this should be what you as a governance team, where you want to be in 5 years. So are you talking about the I guess I'm a little confused. Are you talking about the language that you use for the objectives? Like how you would write that, or I'm not sure I understand about the perspective, because to me it's this strategic plan that's where you as a governance team really want with those objectives. Like this is our objective in 5 years, in 2030, this is where we're going to be. So
So the way Diane, maybe I'll put it this way. The way that I understand it is, as a school, as a governance team, we are presented with these KPIs. Based on that, we make the goals. And then the Go team makes the objectives to fill in those blanks, and more or less, how are we going to move the needle for all of these KPIs? Then the school is going to put the school, what are they called? That far right. And we're going to partner that with the budget. To Josh's point, some of these are going to require dollar amounts that live within the budget, but it might be something, if it's not on, historically, if it's not on the school's strategies, it might not live on the far right side to the answer of how is the school going to address that school strategy, Josh. Does that make sense? So kind of that middle section is, how are we going to address the KPIs and moving the needle over the next 5 years, is from my understanding. And then the school response with its school strategy on that far right, or whatever it's called. And we partner that then with the budget after we prioritize these. Does that make sense? And that might be a resource from a PTA or a foundation, or the districts. It could be done in all different ways.
I think I'm tracking. If I zoom out when we can, set my whole thing to the side, I have no idea. But if I zoom out, the thing that would be on my mind is if we've actually been doing these things with fidelity the last few years, do we think just continuing them will lead to 15% gains in ELA and math and proficiency and above? Or will we need to do some new and different things? Which I recognize that's the start part we haven't got to yet. But if I would make, my hypothesis would be we need to do some new and different things to achieve that. And if so, I'm just thinking about I don't know. I don't think we want to end up with 16 objectives, right? Like just go with the 11 we had and the 5 that are going to be start, right? But again, I'm not trying to say I think any of these objectives that we've pursued historically are bad. I just think starting from the past is hard when it is relevant, but it is hard to start with what we've done only when we're really trying to, I think, ground in a future that's going to be different and create space for the possibility of what it will take for that to happen. Does that make sense? But it may be possible that these objectives, we haven't lived completely into fidelity yet. And we really think that if we did do these 10 things with complete fidelity and excellent execution the next 3 years, that's going to lead to what we want to be true on the KPIs as a whole, to your point, Dion, and the 3 goals.
So does anybody else have any input on what they feel as well? I think that makes sense, Josh, what you just said. I appreciate that, you clarifying.
Well, I think there's a way to, I really like the list of 10, and I think there's a way to tweak your practices or the way that you execute these priorities within the framework that's already established, rather than blowing it up and starting from scratch. I mean, I think, the leadership in the school has been here for 3 years now. And there's positive momentum. There is growth that we're seeing. There is a lot that we can still build on, I think. So I really like what we have so far, and just thinking of ways to modify or explore different ways to carry out the priorities is something we could do.
Mr. Lambing, I do want to add to what you're saying. This 10, not the 10 we've been using for the past years either, right? So this is what we used to establish this year's budget. This is what we came up with when we consolidated. If I'm not mistaken, I think Nolan was on there. It was like 14 that we started off with, and we took and stopped some of those things and got down to these 10. And so to Langbing's point, I don't know that we were executing these 14, those 5 years, that strategic plan that we are shifting or migrating from. This is the first year we've lived fully in these 10 alone. But I do agree that sometimes refining processes versus throwing out hot with the bathwater, as they say, it might be more of a way to go, because when you're so high in achievement, as you pointed out with that goal, it is refining to get what you missed. Is no longer grab the low-hanging fruit. If you do something with the low-hanging fruit, you're gonna move. It's not that much low-hanging fruit anymore. It is refining to get the people that you've missed, and changing processes or refining processes so that you can move the needle for those who may have not gotten the needle moved for. Or what we talk about often is seeing the unseen, like the child who does everything right, but their data might not look right, but they're not the squeaky wheel, so I don't know how you let that live there. That live more in what the school strategies do. But I saw Miss Lynn unmuted, so.
I think I hear all those, and I tend to agree that we may need to focus on the big things. I was just going to say, I think to that end, also, we do have the school strategies, right? So the Go team, if we refine down to the ones that really seem like they're going to be effective, we do also have the school strategies where we can, figure out the pieces that we need to do. But I do think, as you said, Principal Hollis, that these movements are big. And Josh, as you said too, I think that we are going to have to do some broad thinking in order to make those kinds of moves happen.
I mean, this is all helpful context to me. I didn't realize these were recently consolidated and synthesized, and that you all feel like there's room for improvement and execution. And just even hearing that would make me feel better about continuing with these, right? And what my interest was trying to make sure, in particular, Principal Hollis, that you have the space to create whatever change mandate or platform you need for that type of improvement, and didn't want you to feel like you just have to do these 10 because they were the 10, right? And that you have space to add some new ones or cross them out if you thought that was going to be helpful to drive into the future you want. But if you're saying these 10 feel good, and it's about needing to really focus on them and execute them with more fidelity over a longer period of time, that makes sense to me.
I think that these 10 feel good because they're having 14. So I'm not opposed to us considering taking a couple off, right? Or leaving at 10. We are in month of execution of this budget under these 10. And so it is still a work in progress, as most strategic plans are. And these were created before we saw the final product of the district strategic plan as well. So there may be a space or two to where we're like, this is really aligned, and maybe placement the next, like if we go into the next slides, maybe that activity might help us to see the stop a little bit better, but I'm just going by what was given to me or prescribed. So
I was just going to suggest that. And Josh, some in the G3, now we've got to potentially put these school strategies into the district's new 6, what are they called, objectives or categories? I don't know. The red and the black.
Focus areas.
Yeah. Focus areas. And we were told to have 1 and/or 2. And then I dropped in the chat our strategic plan, which is on our website. And for those new members, you'll see there that far right section that Principal Hollis was talking about, the school strategies. Principal Hollis and her team solely come up with how they're going to address this and present it to us. So they own that portion of the plan and can speak to what we put in this middle section. Does that make sense, Josh?
Totally.
And
So
in that
she
space, we don't really
drives that.
it, but as much as that's the part that actually adjusts only as we do our continuous improvement and see what strategies we implemented and whether or not it the needle to get us closer to the goal. That's kind of where that work of always refining and rethinking lives. This is picture as you suggest. So these are focus areas, which are different 4 buckets that we were looking at last time, right? I think those 4 was 3 whole child data 4, 5, APS 5. It was 5. Now we're 6. And so we are strengthening our instructional core. We are caring for every child. We are sparking student curiosity. Our team is our strength. Our responsibility is shared. Our school is efficient and effective. So those are the new focus areas, as Ms. Eldery pointed out. Want to ensure that we get 1 to 2 things into these focus areas from our objectives, and this is what we came up with as a draft to get us working.
Total draft.
This is not by any means where we have to land, and so much so you can see that one of them is repeated.
It's the last bullet under our strength and our team to create an environment. So what Principal and Hollis and I did on my suggestion was take the current 10 items that we had, and if we were just to categorize them under the new 6 focus areas, where would kind of they land if we kept identically the old school strategic priorities, those 10 that we were just talking about. So that's all we did as a start point to have this conversation with you guys, and nothing needs to stay this way. Nothing needs to stay in these buckets. The language can absolutely change, but we were just trying to come up with like, how do we go from the old version to the new version?
And where she's saying you see the created environment that motivates teams, you can argue that goes under the school being efficient and effective, or it goes under our strength as our team. You can do that a couple of these go under multiple spaces, or under another space, but we just wanted to start some and keep to 90-minute agreement, as opposed to starting blank and then it goes over 2 meetings. So we're open, the floor is open to feedback. And the bottom is a few notes. It says we recommend having 1 or 2. Each of the 6, don't go crazy. We can't focus on it. This is our discussion part of our meeting.
So how about we just go number 1 previously was ensure students receive intervention and enrichment to demonstrate mastery on essential standards. So we popped that into, we are strengthening our instructional core. So what do we think about number 1, the language it is, with our goals? And do we think that that would be the right focus area to put it under?
I think it is the right focus area.
How about the language? Do you have any suggestions to that language? So that's more or less what we did. We went down 1 through 10, tried to pop them in an area and look at the language. And if everybody wants to kind of process this and spend the next time, our next meeting is in January, or if we need to have a business meeting, or if you want to send suggestions to compile it, we can do that.
I like the language.
Was that Miss Bryant?
Yeah, it's me, Dr. Bryant. Yeah, I like the language.
Okay. And do you like the category that's in?
Yep. Yep.
And I did pop out so that I can maneuver things where y'all need it to go.
Okay.
So if we continue in that path, I'm
Yeah.
not sure what number utilize academic universal screener data to drive instructional practices to address struggling learners and gifted advanced students. I don't know what number it was, but we have that living, strengthening our instructional core. Do you feel that is appropriate, or should it live somewhere else? Or language change?
You can give thumbs up if you like it. Do you have any
I was gonna
input?
say, makes sense to me.
I mean, I don't know, to fast forward all this, if the language of the 10, right? Like, I did not have any concerns about the language of any of the 10. It was more just this question of like, is this what you want
Is this
to
the
be
right word?
focusing on to drive your progress, right? Like, and then to me, just a quick read of this slide when you had it up, everything seems mapped reasonably to the new focus areas. So I personally, this seems good to me. I don't feel the need to go through one by one, but if that's helpful for processing time for others.
Or we can maybe say thumbs up if you feel like all of them are where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's
So
why
the
everybody's
only thing that I would add is we need to pick a category for that, create an environment that motivates and retains staff and staff members. So it lives in 2 areas right now. Do you believe that that goes into our strength is our team, or our school is efficient and effective? We've got to pick a category for that one because we have it in 2 places.
I think it goes.
I think it goes, the strength is our team.
I agree, because it sounds
You
like
wanna
the way
give me-
it's written, the purpose is to
Thumbs
retain
up.
the staff members.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we're going to
strength-
move create an environment that motivates and retains staff members to our strength is our team. And then what I'm hearing is right now, no one has any edits to the language of this. So we're supportive of the categories they live in currently with that one adjustment and the language. And Diane, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a living document, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what that means is we could move this to an action item, potentially vote on this, if everyone is comfortable with as it reads right now. But if at any point anyone has a suggestion with how something should be worded, we can make that an action item in a meeting, discuss it, and then modify it. Does that make sense? Because I think there could be, you know, some tweaking to some of these language, but I don't think it's going to be big tweaks. Does that make it personally? Like, I think it's wordsmithing stuff. So if we would need to, we could tonight move the mission, vision, the goals, and the, what are they calling these, the new objectives to an action item and potentially vote on adopting those. If I had a motion to make that an action item, then we would take a vote to move that. Is that correct, Diane?
So the answer is yes, you guys could, but I will tell you right now that the way that we've set it up is because this could potentially be a bigger plan, a bigger change than those living documents, small tweaks. If you look, we do have that action item set for your next meeting. So this way it gives exactly kind of what you've said. It gives everybody, not just you on the Go team, but also your community kind of time to process it. And then that's what we have for your next business meeting, is to approve this plan and actually rank the objectives. So everybody can kind of.
Okay, so our
but
next meeting is so we're actually kind of one meeting ahead. So, so
No,
this
you-
would be that meeting, I believe. Some people are just now talking about their mission and vision and their
No,
goals, and
you
we've
guys
talked about
are-
those last.
You guys
two
are right
meetings?
on, you're right on track with a lot of other teams. And that's why we
Okay,
have.
so
at your
you're okay
next-
with this then happening in January?
For this year, yes. Because.
Okay, because we do
because
not have
it's
a
a
meeting
meeting.
in December.
You do not need to have a meeting in December because you're on business meeting 3. You are right on track. And you'll notice that we say business meeting 4, that budget allocation. And for this year, because it is a big potentially a bigger change to your plan. We're giving the plan time for everybody to sit and noodle on it, kind of like you said.
Okay,
to process
so
it.
just to confirm, we will not need to call a meeting in December.
Not unless your team feels that it is necessary.
I mean, from the district at this
No,
point, they're not
as-
asking us to get this done by
As of,
December.
as of right now, what I know, the answer is no. You will not have to call a meeting in December. Because you've
Okay,
identified
so-
your objectives and they're sitting there, so.
Okay, so then we can hold off on this, and if anybody has any revisions, then you can email those to Principal Hollis or myself for the group, and we can talk about them at the next meeting and plan to make this an action item. The mission, vision, the goals, the strategic priorities, which will then be the objectives. And then that next meeting, we will also, Diane, will we also have to rank those?
Yes, that's going to be your meeting in January with the budget allocation. So yes, you
Okay.
will have to rank them at that meeting. So,
So between now and then, everybody also needs to kind of think about how they want to rank these so that we use those 90 minutes the best that we can. But if you want to, we didn't do that last year, but I think it's a good idea if you just want to start thinking about how you're going to rank these. Because if it's like previous years, then that is also how Principal Hollis, those small flexible funds, will work on, to Josh's point, like where are we going to push those actual resources to?
So I can give one suggestion to that end to maybe help streamline that a little bit. In the past, we have seen some teams put out a survey before that meeting where all the team
Yep.
members will just rank it, and then that report gets brought into the meeting for discussion. Right? Like you don't
Yep.
talk about the survey, but you have all the members take the survey and you bring the results in, because that sometimes can streamline that discussion, because if everybody thinks the number one priority is to have the state championship beach volleyball team, then that makes it easy, right? You don't have to discuss that. You can then move on to, well, what's next kind of thing. So that might help move things at your next meeting a little bit too. Just a suggestion.
And we have the context of what the previous prioritization was. That's what those numbers mean on the previous priorities version.
Correct.
Yes.
Because we've always ranked them at the budget allocation meeting, that we can know how to vote in the preceding meetings. So we do have that. I could add them to the document in parentheses after the wording, just so people can tentatively know where they have ranked previously. And I can also send out a survey next week so that you all can, between now and January, rank these according to how you feel everything flows with the plan itself as it is currently drafted.
Right, because they're not finalized objectives yet, so yeah. Sounds good? So I think we are done. Principal House, did you want to add anything else, or did anybody from the Go team want to ask or add anything?
I had one wondering about a potential start, but based on what you shared today, it may be this may be a school level strategy. I don't really know that I feel like I'm learning the altitudes. And it's more reflective of something that I've seen the school doing in the last year or two. It might be worth capturing, which has to do with how the school is using Saturday school and after school as a way to make progress. So I'm not sure if that's a school level strategy, then I know that. But if that is more like at this level, I wonder if that's worth a start that would be added somewhere in here about caring for every child or strengthening our instructional core or something like that. And would potentially have implications for resourcing, which is why I'm raising it. How do we actually fund and staff additional instructional time outside of traditional school hours?
Principal Hollis, did you want to respond to that regarding, I believe that's a school strategy.
I can see both sides of it. Because we do not use currently any of our funds to source tutorial or Saturday school. My concern, if we make it live there, that is something that has to be funded. So then we would have to allocate funds to make that objective occur. Whereas if we leave it as a school strategy, I can continue to utilize foundations as a way to fund that. So as we continue to develop the process, see how funding lands, that might make my decision a little bit more clear. But if it's tight and the numbers keep going up, I might not really want to allocate funds in that way. But to your point, we have some additional slides around intervention that we added for the principal report. So if we done with this portion, we can continue to move. So at our next meeting, again, we're going to vote on the strategic plan. We're going to rank these objectives and be discussing our budget, and that is January meeting. Please me or Ms. Elderi know if you have any additional information you need to help with that discussion so that we can ensure that we bring it. And I think we've already opened up questions. Have any information items? So to the principal's report, this is as of Sunday. Our enrollment was 1191. We've had some people to enroll this week, so it really might not be completely accurate right now. Our demographics, are still listed there. 1 or 2 enrollment, not going to shift that a lot. Attendance rate, we are still tracking at our goal of remain of 90% for chronic absenteeism, which is commendable considering we had a lot of people out with respiratory issues over the past couple weeks and with the weather changing. So I'm very excited that that is still 90 and trending above 90. And then the discipline information is at the bottom. What we've been looking at as a school is around that male incidents far out female incidents, and we're trying to look at some potential mentoring relationships. One of them being with the Atlanta Fire Department. So we have entered the application for that, and that will address some of our students that are high flyers in that space. Before I move on, do I have any questions or concerns?
Have you ever done that before, the mentor?
We have. Actually, I did it at Midtown as well, but I did it my first year here. It's very interesting, and I think Dr. Bryan is about the only person from teaching staff that's on the call that can understand where you've come from. Miss Nolan and Elaine Bean doesn't even understand what I was tasked to do when I first got hired, and Miss Ilduri can speak to it as a parent, because the way we're looking at the discipline numbers now and what they were when I'm here at school, it looked totally different. So we did partner with a former school counselor who has his own business to kind of address that. This would be our first time doing it since then. So
Sounds awesome. Just wondering.
And we're
And also I'll
in
say the
conversation with Paint Love on some art therapy, but we're trying to angle in which we're going to look at that, whether it be used as a means of still addressing the male students or maybe addressing students that haven't gone through our feeder schools and give them a sense of community coming in grade when you're confused about life, and also in a new environment where we've been together for years. And we also looked at it as possibly saying to do for our non-English speaking families to help them feel more included. So we've got a couple of things with the Paint Love partnership, and we're trying to write that down with hopes of getting that set in January.
And Principal Hollis, I just want to add that I've seen some emails on Schoology at Midtown regarding the partnership with the fire station as well, and I hadn't seen that the last 2 years. So it's nice to see kind of if that partnership continues for these kiddos from middle school to high school. But I have recently, since this school year, seen a similar thing.
We've identified if the fire department partnership, we identified 6th and 7th grade male students we want to target for that, so that they don't create these relationships. They're gone. So we wanted to see if we could do something where we could track how it would go if they would continue with these mentoring relationships into next year. And then the Paint Love thing would be more to address something that, doesn't need multi-year traction. So those are things we're doing around the behavior. As you see, the cell phone is 116. This might be repeat offenders, not all first timers. And just wanted to put that out. So I wanted to give some update in general. We focus on all the what's going wrong, how we're going to fix it. Sometimes we forget to focus on the things that are going well. And so I wanted to give some space earlier, not when we're trying to rush off, to talk about some things that are going well. So here's some things we have with our sports. And from that list, just vocalizing 3 out of 4 of the bullets are club sports, actually. So that's a shout out to having that connection and partnership with our booster to provide opportunities for our students to participate in other sports besides the sports that district sponsors. But the district sponsored sport, we are the three-time championships as the APS middle school softball champions. So very, very proud of our team. Our 8th girls don't even know what it's like to lose it in middle school, first of all, and that is not a normal occurrence. So shout out to them and keeping it going. Our young authors competition has kicked off and started. Those submissions are due district wide, and we will have a district wide spelling bee on a school wide spelling bee on December 2nd, so we can know who is going to represent the school district wide. Last year, our person made it, I think, pretty far. I don't remember right now. STEAM updates, we've done a lot with trying to kind of create ongoing PBLs that will go on and continue to live as they matriculate through Howard. We started last year with UGA on our garden project, and in 6th grade they compost, in 7th grade they plant, and this year in 8th grade we're going to be testing the pH of the soil and seeing how they can fix or improve that. And so we're trying to attack that grade level by grade level. We also are adding in a partnership with the Beltline to look at, if you haven't noticed, there's no recycling on the Beltline. And trying to kind of attack that and listen to why there's no recycling on the Beltline. So the students are starting to engage in that. Our school-wide STEAM fair starts Monday, and they have been doing classroom competitions this week to see who makes it to the school-wide fair. And also, we still are continuing our recycling with the Hawks and Novellas. So we're going to have some more aluminum bottled water this year. And so I'm excited that the partnership went well and we were able to continue that. And we're adding an additional PBL that is going to be grade level specific, but it can continue as they matriculate through around what is it like to have a food truck, and designing it, what kind of revenue streams and profit and all that stuff. So they will do that as they matriculate through. So we're excited about that. And our family engagement team school-wide trying to also figure out how can we do more to bring more of the community, a wider representation to the school, to our events. And one of the ideas that they had was to bring back a 5K. I think at Inman they used to have a 5K. So we're bringing it back. Used to call it a Frosty 5K or something. But our planning would put us like in the ice storm age for this year, when we normally have them, and this house doesn't really like cold. So what I've suggested is to do a Pi Day 5K. You like that? Play on words. And Pi is on the weekend, and we're STEAM school, so I thought it would be exciting, and maybe people will get on board since I didn't give them the Frosty date. in the middle of January to do a 5K. So that is that. And so then to go back to intervention conversation, what do we do around our intervention? It was requested that we elevate to all what the school already does. And so there are really 4 big buckets that we look at things, Saturday school being one of them. Support and math support classes. If you remember, we allocated more of our funds to ensure that we got separate reading and math intervention classes per grade level, 2 per grade level for each of those subjects. So that's how we get that. Let me see. And then we will start doing, we have not, well, we are already doing before school, after school, and during lunch tutorial. Lunch tutorial is not for every child. It is not every day. It is not in our classes. The required is the before and after school, but we do have some opportunities for lunch tutorial. And every teacher does small group instruction. You'll see more of that on the next slide. And those students who need a higher level of support, they are also being monitored for their progress and have external goals besides what we have set for the whole school. And so looking at the difference between these things, what supports do we have during the day, what supports do we have after school, or beyond the day. So we tried to kind of help people to see what was going on here. So again, with our math support and reading support, the class sizes are capped at 18. And the data we use to place students in there is the map data. So it is not how I feel. It is using data to place in the class. But parents can opt out of the class. We do surprisingly have parents to say they don't want the child in the reading support or math support class, regardless of what the data is saying. And then towards the end of the year, we'll start pulling kids out of their connection classes, not every day, maybe like once a week, depending. And it's on the last map, which is in March. Saturday school is a option type thing because the parent has to provide transportation. It is open to all. If your child was out sick and has gotten a little lost and needs a little assistance to get them back on track, that's an opportunity to go there. It's not just about we're only servicing the bottom quartile students. And then teacher tutorials are the excellent way to catch up. They are before after school. And the students can go to any math or any ELA teacher on that grade level to receive that. In case, your schedule might change, you might need to shift some things. So you're not tied into that day of the week. And so who are we servicing and what are our outcomes? Of course, these are our outcomes because we want to meet our goals. But we're trying to think about multiple ways, and this is every day, and Mr. Lambing can tell you, in the class, they're expected to have at least once or twice a week a small group set of students that they're targeting to make sure that the standards that they taught this week, they see that they're getting behind or a little extra assistance on, then you pull those students to the side to give that assistance. This is what we've been doing since I got here. I would like to say that I believe that that's one of the reasons why the data moved as quickly as it did, and putting some other structures in place as well. But we are bought into that space.
This is all, I think, really helpful context. And great work that's happening. Just to draw the through line from our previous conversation to this, on slide 29, the slide you were on right before this, are there specific ways you've pulled resource and budgeting levers to make some of these things possible that wouldn't have otherwise been possible?
So the reading support and math support teachers adjusted monies in order to make that happen. It's not built into the budget. Our MTSS 504 specialist, we allocate funds in order to keep that position there. That is not a position that's granted by the district. Honestly, when we're talking about the number of teachers that in the building, that's also our flexibility, because the state really says that it have about 35 kids in every class. The fact that we keep it really to around 25, that is allocating the budget to make sure that our classes are still flexible to where you can still do the small instruction and get the things that are expected to happen done space with the teacher.
And you said earlier you're pulling on foundation levers for things like Saturday school. Okay. That's really helpful. Thanks for talking that through.
Welcome. Do I have any other questions?
Question, the number of kids in the co-taught class versus a non-co-taught class, like an on-level, what are those differences approximately? Is that the 18 to 25?
No, 18 is for reading support and math support. There are limits from a special education perspective on how many gen ed kids can be in a class. There are also limits that for the state around special education students being in a self-contained class. They're just state laws. And we traditionally try to keep on grade level classes smaller than accelerated high school classes, because those kids are more self-regulated and intrinsically motivated.
So what I'm hearing is accelerated classes. So you're pushing in more support to the students using those class sizes, with accelerated tends to be the larger on level, and then the co-taught classes are dictated by state and district guidelines and federal guidelines.
That is correct. And Mr. Langdon, you
Okay.
can speak more to it as a teacher from that if you want to.
No, I don't really have anything to add on top of what you already said.
And then the another question I have is, what portion approximately, I don't know if you know this, of parents opt out? And do you think that the math and reading support classes, are you seeing that the kids who buy into that, are there attending school? Because I know you've mentioned some of these kiddos, it's a challenge to get them in school on a consistent basis. Like, how does that chronic absenteeism look, and how does the rate of parents who opt out of this, are you seeing these things work when students are doing them? Does that make sense? And showing up?
Yes, if they are doing and showing up, I do think that in those support classes, you tend to have more students who have attendance issues, and some that don't, right? It just varies. To answer your first question about the number of parents that opt out, we have it's not a lot, but also it's not a lot of kids in the class, right? So traditionally you see 3 to 5 per grade level opt out.
Thank you. This is really helpful data. This was in response to, we had some community members reach out with regards to questions around the support, what was done inside the school and outside of the school, and how those things were funded and what they look like. So I really appreciate you, Principal Hollis, putting these 3 slides together. Anybody else? Jenny, did you? Oh, Jenny's going to hop off. Any other questions?
We may not have time, but I think what would help me show up and be better in January is like, Principal Hollis, if you had $200,000 more dollars, would it just be funding more of these things to bring class size down even further? Or is there like a bullet point that's not on the slide where you're like, oh, if I had $200,000 more dollars, I'd start doing this?
Off the top of my head.
Okay.
I mean, I think, to be honest with you, this year, with that super increase of students and not wanting to exacerbate schedules by buying so many extra teachers at that time of the year at the limited. So we have utilized some of those extra funds to ensure, like I did, increase and have 2 STEAM field trips this year. I think that's important, and trying to really invest in the STEAM programming, whether it be the PBL, whatever, because the more we can get students to experience what we're talking about in theory, the more touch points we give, or to commit to long-term memory and not just be for the test. And you know, we do lean on outside dollars to help with professional development, but having those extra students this year has allowed us to, you know, when a teacher has, you know, requested to go, we've now been able to say, as long as it's not conflicting with a major thing in programming, I pretty much said yes. Social studies needed to expand, you know, what they were 6th grade on novel studies. Okay, no problem. Like, it's just, you're able to fund. We did have some funds left to where we're going to consider to add a supplemental math book, but I paused on that just because the district is supposedly getting RFPs for a K-12 math textbook and a K-12 science textbook. And I don't want our resource to conflict with whatever they're purchasing. And I try to be mindful of taxpaying dollars and not purchase because we have it to purchase, right? So that's where we're trying to make sure we're not just adding things to just add it, but adding things that's going to add value. And really this year, streamlining what we're adding, really having conversations starting now about, do we need all $60,000 worth of educational software? And if you want something different, what are you taking away, right? So that we can point a through thread piece to this resource helped us to make the shifts that we needed to make, and not just doing it just because it's there. So I would want to open up that conversation to all the decision makers at the table, including some teacher leaders, if I were to have free use of $200,000.
It'd be a good problem to have. But
It
I
would be a
appreciate you. I'm sure it's
problem to
probably
have.
exhausting to talk through all this with us, but I found that talk through super helpful, just to see behind your eyes a little bit more about how all the things that are happening and how it connects to various choices, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I just try to be very thoughtful because the pie is the pie, but we don't have an unlimited pie, right? And even in some schools that are title, I'm well aware that they pay the teachers for the after school or before school tutoring space, and we don't. Like, so it's different things, and it goes back to retaining top talent. I don't want to lose somebody because they want to go to the school where they're paying them to give tutoring, so just those conversations. But I don't like to start something that we can't continue as well. And as Ms. Eldery stated, we really are in a space of flux for being. So I just don't want to bring people on to say, oh, I have to take you away next year, so we can't have it. So I try to be very thoughtful on what we add on so that we can continue to have it. So it took a couple years to add that second STEAM field trip because I don't want to tax families' pockets, but I want to make sure it's sustainable when we do it. And as you can see, our CCRPI results should come out sometime this week. But so far, what I do know is we have been named to beat in the odd school on our data from last year. We're a 5-star climate star rating school, and I have to keep saying that until they send out the new set. We're the traditional APS 5-star rated climate school. Out of all elementary, middle, and high, the only traditional school that's 5 stars. And then Friday, I think it was, Superintendent Woods released the literacy leader schools and the math leader schools. And this is our second year being named math leader school and our first year being named a literacy leader school. So very excited about that. And just reminding people of our GMAS accomplishments from last year.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Ms. Eldery, do you have anything for that?
Sure. So the cluster advisory team had their first meeting. I serve on the CAT. I will be chair this year. Melissa Clark from BHE as vice chair, Lindley Terrace as secretary. We have decided to do another data dig in the spring. We did our first one in last spring, partnered with SINS. It was a little bit different classically. That is online, and I can add that link to the meeting minutes for this meeting. We also did a safety engagement and an engagement on test and assessments. We're going to meet again. We meet 2 more times, and they're also committing this year to having the district executive committee, which the chair and a principal from minimally from each CAT sit on. So that is all I have for the cluster engagement team. Oh, we'll also be looking at doing an engagement on more or less like a cluster-wide overview of what STEAM looks like across the cluster and a summary to educate and engage what, again, the PK through 12 experiences for Midtown community from a staff and student perspective. So we'll be partnering with the head of STEAM on that, hopefully. In terms of the comprehensive long-range planning, the Board of Education met last Wednesday, of which the first read to the final plan for this phase of the comprehensive long-range planning came out. The second read of this plan will be in December board meeting, and the board will vote on it. That's on the APS 2040 website. In terms of the Midtown cluster, the current proposal is proposing an addition, a 300 capacity addition that is eSPLOST dependent. And that's the important disclaimer. That addition is dependent upon the vote, and then eSPLOST, and then eSPLOST projects, if it's passed, will then be prioritized. They did want to call out that future growth beyond the current additions capacity will require feeder boundary changes in accordance with the board boundary policy. That language lives in that presentation. They also, since that addition is dependent on eSPLOST, they also gave us the timeline for the eSPLOST discussions and the redistricting and rezoning discussions on a slide in that presentation. And you can see that the eSPLOST discussions will start in January through March, And that vote will be with the board in June. There'll be engagement with the community before that. And the East Bloss final decision and vote to the city at large will be in November. Any schools that are dealing with redistricting or rezoning will start engagement in the spring, this next coming spring and fall, and there'll be a board vote in the fall 2026 for the schools that are planning to be rezoned in school year 27-28. And subsequently, any redistricting for school year 28-29, that discussion will start in spring 2027 and fall 2027 with board vote in fall 2027. So there will be votes with those closings that come with them, but we did ask for them to give that timeline in a written format and really appreciate that they put that in a bulleted form. That's on that presentation, that final presentation that was presented to the board on Wednesday's meeting and can be found on APS 2040 and the board website. There's going to be a couple more engagements with Principal Hollis updated the slide with the engagements. I posted that on the Facebook page and we'll get that to the newsletter. There's an English and a Spanish version as well. And you can read the dates there and we'll add that to the meeting minutes as well. I believe that's it for the APS 2040, Principal Hollis.
Awesome.
Did you have anything to add in there on that?
I didn't. Very thorough.
So announcements would be the next section.
And they're up.
Fabulous.
We're in
So the
Family
principal
Engagement
copies.
Month. Please, take the minutes it takes to complete the family engagement survey. And our principal's copy is on Thursday virtually. And that's it. If anyone else has anything?
Is there any other public comments? I don't think
there weren't
anybody
any
signed up
here. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to call this meeting to adjourn. It is, let me get a motion to adjourn this meeting. Sorry.
So moved.
Thank you, Josh. In a second.
I second.
Thank
I
you.
second.
And thank you so much, Dr. Bryant. And could I get a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Anybody? And that was unanimous. So no one's against, no one's abstained. It is 6:16. I call this meeting to adjourn. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Hollis, hop on, or Principal Hollis? Okay.